Buzz Williams and Maryland basketball add another young piece.
You are Locked On Terps, your daily podcast on the Maryland Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
What's up, everyone? I'm Tre Moore, host of Locked On Terps, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So thank you guys for making us part of your day. And I'm also doing work at Inside Black and Gold. So make sure you guys head over to insideblackandgold.net for all your latest Terps news. Maryland basketball lands another big-time commit that I think will really help us in the long run. Buzz Williams is on a huge hot streak right now, and Maryland basketball continues to add on commits and commits. And we keep filling out this roster that I said a couple days ago was an empty room that basically anybody could enter it right now, and I would be happy, has turned into more of a filled room with our team becoming more and more and more complete. And we just added another kid who I really liked. I talked about the two guards yesterday that we added, and Andre Mills and David, two guys that I really like. Andre Mills coming from Texas A&M, and then David coming from Kansas, who I think has a chance to be a fan favorite type of player. And now after getting two guards, we added another big guy, a bigger body in this lineup that I really like for the Terps to be able to make a high-end impact for Maryland basketball next year. And we add a kid who I think is going to really help us down the line in the next couple of years and could be a huge impact player next year for the Terps in this kid, George Turkson. He's another Texas A&M kid, so he's part of that Buzz Williams pipeline, that big pipeline that we have right now going from Texas A&M to Maryland, obviously with Buzz Williams being our coach. And I do think something that I want to talk about really quickly, I do think it's a really big deal that a lot of guys are following Buzz Williams to Maryland. I think that shows a lot about the type of coach he is. One, players clearly like him. You don't follow a coach somewhere that you don't like. You just don't do that. I think players respect him. I think people like playing for him. I think players really enjoy being part of his programs, or else we wouldn't have a bunch of Texas A&M guys following. I don't know if you guys saw what Jacoby Gillespie's dad retweeted about Kevin Willard, but Gillespie, I know Villanova reached out to him, but Gillespie decided to go to Tennessee. And after the season he had, averaging 14 points a game, was a 5 assist type of guy as well, being a third-team All-Big Ten, you would kind of expect him to probably follow his coach to Villanova, but it shows that Gillespie didn't respect Willard the same way, that he wanted to go back home. Guys don't always have to follow their coach just because. Look at Rodney Rice. He's having a hard time making a decision when a lot of people, all the Texas A&M guys, a lot of these guys didn't have to make a decision. A lot of these guys knew pretty quickly early on they had their do not contact tag on when they entered the portal, and they went and committed to Maryland pretty fast and pretty quick, which I think is important for the Terps. So we're starting to see that Texas A&M pipeline really kind of finish out. I don't know how many other guys there are that we possibly could end up getting, or what the deal is, how many of those guys are still in the portal, but I really like the guys that we got, and I really like this George Turkson guy because I think he really gives us something that we're really in need of in a lot of different ways. I think one of the biggest things about getting a kid like this is that he's young. We're getting a kid that redshirted last year, so he still has 4 years of eligibility remaining, which I think is extremely important. And then he's also was a high-level prospect a couple years ago, but we get 4 years of experience, or we get 4 years out of him, which I think is going to be really big because a lot of guys you get in the portal, you might have them for 1 to 2 years. It's tough to really build a program like that. It's tough to really build your roster like that when you're only going to get guys for 1 to 2 years. And this kid, George Turkson, we're going to get for 4 years. And it's actually very similar to the situation with Andre Mills, who was the Texas A&M guard that we got. That was a freshman guard last year that redshirted as well. So these two guys are rather similar in terms of that type of role that I talked about yesterday, in terms of guys that we can start building around, guys that we expect to be here for the next couple of years, guys that have a lot of talent and that we can start doing some things with, and we can start building this roster around guys that we can depend on, hopefully for the next couple of years. And if they come out next year and are really good players, that's when you start to be in a really good spot as a program overall. When you have a guy that redshirted and that still have 4 years of experience and still have a lot of time to grow and become the players that they want to be, that's when you're going to strike a really good point, when you have two guys like that. And I think we do have two guys like that in George Turkson Jr., who just committed the other day, and then as well as Andre Mills, who committed a couple days ago. So I really do like where we're at in terms of we have a good kind of mix of young guys and older guys in the portal. And I do think that's important. I think if we brought in all older guys, it'd be annoying because you'd have to dive into the portal heavily again the next year. And you don't want to do that every single year, but I think we do have a good mix when you really look at it. Like Miles Rice has played a good bit. Pharrell Payne has played a lot. David Coit has played a lot. Solomon Washington's played a lot. And then we also, of course, have George Turkson, who hasn't played as young, but we know is really talented. And then Andre Mills as well. And then if you look at his kind of ranking out of high school, he was also a 4-star rated recruit, barely outside the top 100 on 247, but I think has a lot of talent. A lot of people saw that if he got a year and if he could just grow up in experience and get his skill level up a little bit, he's definitely a guy that could help out a Maryland team. And at the time, they probably thought a Texas A&M team, but they definitely thought could be a good player in college basketball. And he's just going to be a freshman next year. So I do think that's a really big part of this and really important. And overall, I like where we're at. I liked adding another guy with some size. I thought we were lacking a little bit of size. I thought Payne and Solomon Washington were two kind of bigger guys. Wow, we brought in a good amount of guards with Andre, David, and Miles, all players that you kind of feel like are a little bit on the smaller side of things. And I felt like we needed a bigger body. And I do think George Turkson Jr. brings that a little bit of flexibility in terms of size. Now, I don't know exactly in terms of his position does he play, because he's listed as a 3 on 247, but they also have him as a power forward. I feel like he's more of a 4, but I'm also not exactly sure. And I don't know exactly what he's like in terms of his skill level and stuff. So that's something that we're going to have to continue to dive into and figure out. You just hope, having a year of experience at Texas A&M, having a year of developing at Texas A&M, you just hope he's developed into a better player and a more skillful player overall. But I do like where we stand right now in the portal. I saw the rankings come out. We're a top 10 portal class right now. Excuse me. And part of that's really exciting for us, because it's like we're a top 10 portal class. I think Buzz Williams is doing a pretty good job with the portal. And anytime you have a top 10 portal class, you're doing some things right, because it's such a big part of today's game that so many people are using it. So many people are diving into it, that being a top 10 portal class is really important, especially when you were like a Terps team that had 0 people on their team, and that will probably continue to have 0 people on your team. Rodney Rice did announce his top 6, I guess. People in the portal do that now, and Maryland was on that, but I still wouldn't expect him to come back. So really an empty room that you're working with, if you don't have a top 10 portal class after working with an empty room, you're probably going to be honestly in trouble for the next year in the Big Ten. So that's kind of the other side of it. It is really nice, but it's also like we kind of better have that, because we're bringing in we're going to be bringing in probably like 12 to 15 guys out of the portal. So you would hope that Maryland has a pretty good ranking in terms of their portal class, because of how many guys that we're bringing in. And I think the quality is definitely pretty decent. Like I said the other day, I definitely want a little bit more star power, but I just don't know if we're going to get that in year one. Is kind of how I'm seeing it. And what's probably realistic is probably not getting quite the star power that you want. But I don't know if you guys have seen with Villanova. Villanova hasn't been able to bring in a bunch of heavy hitters yet, and they might get some eventually. But Kevin Willard went to Villanova because the NIL was supposed to be better, and some of these things were supposed to be better. But we haven't seen him get a bunch of heavy hitters. We've seen him get 2 Maryland guys that we don't really even know how good they are. And Malachi Palmer, who's a freshman last year, obviously the fact that Willard recruited him back to Villanova shows that he probably was going to be a pretty good player, that he saw something in practice. And then Jeffrey, our 4-star commit, that decided to flip to Villanova, but he hasn't gotten Rodney Rice. He hasn't gotten Gillespie yet. So even though Kevin Willard leaving definitely hurt us, we're seeing him it's way too early. It's way too early to kind of look at it, but still, I'm looking over there at Villanova. I'm saying, whispering, they're not getting a ton of guys yet. And I'm seeing Buzz Williams, and I know he got the advantage with getting a bunch of Texas A&M guys, but still, we've gotten some quality players that you feel pretty good about being good guys, like David, Miles Rice. Like, those guys are going to be definitely pretty good for us next year, and definitely other schools wanted. So I do think Buzz Williams is doing a good job with this portal class, and I am excited about the most recent ad with George Sirksen Jr. just being a young guy, 6'7" wing, athletic, 220 pounds. He sounds like he's a pretty versatile type of guy, and we're going to see exactly. We'll dive more into what his game looks like. I'll do more research on that, but I do think that we're in a good spot. We have a combination of youth. We have a combination of youth with older guys, and I really like where Maryland's at overall with their roster. And I do want to add in a couple more heavy hitters, but I think we're lining up for this team to have a good amount of depth, and I think the pieces are coming together pretty good. Is it better than last year's team? No, but that's going to be a tough one to beat. So I do like where we're at currently. Let's switch gears. We're getting closer and closer to kind of the football season, believe it or not. Once you hit summer, that's really that time, and we're almost into summer. So let's start talking more football. I do have concern about the receiver room. I touched on it yesterday, but I want to talk about it some more. We'll talk about that next. This is a message from sponsor Intuit TurboTax. Taxes was waiting and wondering and worrying if you were going to get any money back, and then waiting, wondering, and worrying some more. Now Taxes is matching with TurboTax expert who can do your taxes as soon as today. An expert who gives your taxes their undivided attention as they work on your return, while you get real-time updates on their progress so you can focus on your day. An expert who will find every deduction possible and file every form, every investment, everything with 100% accuracy. Also, you can get the most money back guaranteed. No waiting, no wondering, no worries. Now this is Taxes. Get an expert now at TurboTax.com. Only available with TurboTax Live full service. Real-time updates only in the iOS mobile app. See guarantee details at TurboTax.com/guarantees. So I talked about yesterday Braden Wissolowski transferring out of the Maryland receiver room. And I do think it's a loss. I don't think it's a crazy loss. I'm not going to sit here and act like I thought he was going to be like an 1,000-yard receiver next year. But I am kind of concerned with the current depth chart of the Maryland receiver room and kind of how the overall identity of our team is shaping up. I don't know if you guys realize over the past couple of years, we've thrown the ball a ton, and the receivers have been a part of our identity as a team. The receivers have been a strength of our team. Ty Fellon last year was in the Biletnikoff conversation, had one of the better seasons we've seen a Maryland receiver have. We've had other guys like Rakeem Jarrett. We've had a lot of good receivers over the past couple of years. DJ Moore, and in Maryland's history, there's a lot of different guys you can point to that are high-end Maryland receivers that got it done. There's so many more that I didn't even name, and I want to get back to the point of the actual team right now. It's been our identity for the last couple of years, but I don't know if this group, personally, I don't know if this group is strong enough for me to feel good about it being our identity going into next year. But it's not like one of those situations where I can point to another part of our football team and be like, the running game, though, our receiver core isn't as good, but the running game's great. Or the receiver core is not awesome, but our offensive line is really freaking good. Like, I don't feel that way. So usually we can point to the receiver room and be like, we might not have the best run game in the world, but we're going to have Caden Prather and Ty Felton outside. So we feel pretty solid about that. Or we don't feel great about us getting protected, but we can get the ball out fast to Rakeem Jarrett or some of these other guys, Dante Demas, and some of these other guys that have gone through Maryland football as a receiving options. And this year, I just don't know. There's a whole lot of uncertainty. There's a whole lot of we're just not sure about it. Where last year and the year before, you felt kind of good. It was like, okay, we have Jayshon Jones in the slot. We have Ty Felton outside. We have King Prather. Last year, we had Ty and Caden still outside. Like, we felt good about the guys being able to separate, about having experience. In this room right now, there's not anybody that I feel great about. I think the guy that's done the most is Jaleel Farouk. He had a really good season at Oklahoma. But the fact of the matter is, he's removed from an injury, and that really good 45 reception season for 694 yards is kind of a while ago now. That was 2023. In 2024, got injured. 2022 had a really good season as well with 37 receptions, 466 yards. But at this point, we're kind of asking ourselves, is he going to be the guy coming back from injury, coming back from some of the hurt? And then you look down it as well and you say, okay, we really expect Octavian Smith to make a jump, but he also hasn't proven a ton. He's had a couple good games here or there. We know he's fast. We know he's probably one of the faster, more explosive guys on the team, but that doesn't get you open. That doesn't make plays on Saturday, just being fast and athletic and talented. So we don't know there. And then Caleb Webb, who was a high-level recruit at Tennessee, just hasn't done anything, to be completely honest. Hasn't done anything at Tennessee. Has 6 receptions for 48 yards in 2024. In 2023, 16 for 166 yards. Just hasn't really done anything for Tennessee. So you look down this receiver room, and it's usually something we can hang our hat on. It's usually something that we do a really good job of recruiting. It's usually something that we feel really good about. And right now, I just don't know. I just don't know who the guys are. I just don't know who the difference makers are. And sometimes you just have to wait and see. And that's what's exciting about sports, because you don't know who's going to break out. You don't know who's going to prove that he can do this or they can do that. You don't know who's going to step up or step down. And that's some of the really unique part of sports is you put people in different situations where they're not comfortable, and you're going to see who succeeds, who steps up. And there is a part of that that's true, but there's also a part where you are scared to death right now, because it's like, who on earth is Malik Washington throwing to, or who on earth is Justin Martin throwing to? And the offensive line hasn't been great in feels like 50 years, hasn't been great, hasn't been decent in the last 5 years. It's been a bottom group in the Big Ten. So you just start to think, where is this identity on our offense going to come from? Where can we make our money? Where do we feel good about? And could I be wrong about the Caleb Webb step up and be a really good receiver? Could Farouk come back and be high end after his injury? Could Octavian Smith look like an all Big Ten guy, and that explosiveness and that speed really gets turned on to a new level? Yeah, I could be, but do I feel great about that happening? No. Do I feel like that's an automatic going to happen? No. And so I'm just starting to really dissect this football roster, and we'll continue to talk about it, because there's been a ton of Maryland basketball with Buzz Williams in the portal, and there probably, hopefully, still is going to be news. And it's a lot of people have been tuning in for that, so we've been talking about it. But we're gonna start switching gears to some football stuff, and I'll tell you guys right now for free. There's going to be a consistent topic for me. I have a lot of concerns about this football team, what they can do, what we can turn into. And that's just a reality of the situation. I like some of the stuff. I'm not in love with a lot of position groups when we really go down it. I don't know if there's a position group I feel great about, to be completely honest, this year. I don't know if there's a position group I feel great about. I like a lot of people. I like a lot of guys, but I don't know if I feel great about any position group. So we're going to see exactly, but I can tell you guys right now, I have concern with this receiver room, and there's more concern than any other position group, maybe just because this is what we usually hang our cat, or this is usually where we make our money, where we can do a lot of things, where we hang our hat on. And we are known for with Diggs and DJ Moore and Raheem Jarrett and Ty Felon coming out this year and Caden Prather being like, this is usually what we're known for. And I just don't know if we have that juice this year that's going to allow us to play how we've played the last couple of years. Now we're going to have a new OC. We're going to have some changes. Things are going to look a little different. So maybe it will be different, but we'll see exactly how it ends up. We're going to play a little game to end the show. We're going to talk about each player in the Maryland basketball portal and who we picked up. Are they a role player for us? Are they a starter? Are they a star? We'll put them in a couple different categories. We'll talk about that next. So we're going to go through each name in the portal, and we're going to give them kind of a category out of all the guys that Maryland basketball picked up in the portal. I thought this was fun because yesterday I said Maryland's lacking star talent. So I kind of want to go through the roster and say, are they a starter for us? Or are they a guy that's not going to play? So we'll have 4 categories. There's going to be star, starter, and there's going to be role player, and then there's going to be guy that won't play. And so let's see. We're going to start with George Cherkson, our newest commit. To me, right now, where I would guess he would be is a role player. He's still young. He's still probably not ready to be a Big Ten type of starter. Maybe that's my best guess. I also haven't seen him play. There's not going to be anything on him since high school because he redshirted last year. But to me, that's kind of a role player type of pickup. So we're going to keep him in the category of role player because that's kind of where I see him right now. Let's move on to Solomon Washington. I honestly think role player as well. George Cherkson and Solomon Washington, to me, are very similar. Both 6'7", both listed at 220. I think they're very similar in terms of that. And so I think Solomon Washington is a really good defensive player. I think he does some things well on the court. But to me, that's a role player. To be like a really quality Big Ten starter, you got to be probably a pretty good offensive player, at least a solid offense player. That's kind of how I want it to be seen. And I see him kind of limited offensively, but he does a lot of good stuff defensively. And it's kind of in that Jordan Geronimo build, if you guys will, maybe a little bit better than that, maybe a little bit bigger role for Texas A&M. He is an elite defender, but to me, that's a little bit more of a role player. Now, Pharrell Payne, he's a starter. He's a starter. He could be a star. He could be a star next year if he takes a jump, if he's a guy we have to rely on. I do think he's our starting 4 or 5. We'll see who else we end up getting. He's a pretty big dude down there. To me, he's a starter for sure, and he's a guy that we're definitely really excited about, a guy that I think is going to be a really good player for Maryland basketball. So I think he's a starter. So right now we have 2 kind of role players and 1 starter. Now let's move on to David Coit Jr. I kind of go back and forth between this guy because he's small, but I do think for this team, he could end up being a starter. But I'm not talking about for this team. It's would I kind of want him to start? To me, I don't hate David starting. I do think he can get it done. I think he's kind of that fringe role starter kind of spot. But I think next year, if he's in the right spot, if he gets really the keys to the offense, if we allow him to do some things, I don't mind him being a starter for us, to be completely honest. As a veteran, as a guy that can create a shot, he's a little undersized, but other than that, I really like his game. So I'm going to say starter. And then Miles Rice to me is a starter. Miles Rice was a starter sometimes last year for Indiana. I thought he was a little bit underrated on Indiana. I thought they could have done a little bit more with him with the talent that he has. And he's tied with Solomon Washington for our second highest rated or tied for, our second highest rated guy in the portal. Pharrell Payne's first, according to 247. But I do like Miles Rice's game a lot. I do think he's a starter, like a definite starter for us. I think he's a solid Big Ten starter who has high upside. He reminds me a bit of Rodney Rice last year. I think Rodney Rice shoots the 3 ball a little bit better. I think Miles Rice gets to his mid-range a bit better, but that's just how I see it. I do see him as a starter. And then Andre Mills, our last guy, I'm going to say role player because you can't say starter to a guy we haven't seen. I know he's a 4-star recruit. I know he's a top 100 guy, but he redshirted last year as well. So I'm going to go ahead and say role player. That's all we have for today. Thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps. Make sure you guys like and subscribe. We're here every day talking Maryland football and basketball. So thank you guys for listening to Locked on Terps.